On this week's Political Figure episode, come free-falling with me and call me Tom because I am about to get petty. So I had a couple people in mind for today's video that would have been informative, educational even. And I was about to start doing my research for those, and then I got some hate mail from somebody who clearly failed out of kindergarten. Seriously, read this shit. Hey, Nazi loser. Any fucking trivialize the crimes of Hillary and to Democrats that literally chose to elect Trump. Hey, this she'd murdered millions in Africa to keep them debt slaves to France. Resist, piece of shit. Dude, do you need medical attention? Because it sounds like you were having a fucking stroke. Here's the thing is, I was gonna ignore this because there's a lot going on in the world that's far more important than anything this brain damaged twat waffle has to say. Then I noticed his username was David Orlikoff, which is unfortunate for him. 14th district. I was like, wait a minute, is this motherfucker an elected official? And it didn't take much Googling to find out that the answer is yes. Well, kind of. He was elected to Police District Council 14 in Chicago. And a Police District Council is basically just people who are elected and given the authority to write strongly worded letters about the police on behalf of the community. This dude is basically the Chuck Schumer of holding a couple cops accountable in Chicago. And look, I don't want to shit talk anybody doing something to try to hold police accountable, but like, you know, tell me I'm wrong. The point is, he is actually an elected official. Granted, it's to an almost pretend position, but elected nonetheless, and that made me feel oh so petty. So anyway, David Orlikoff was born apparently 36 years ago, although you'd never tell by his permanently underdeveloped frontal lobe. Clearly the dude should have said no to drugs, because he's obviously been too poor his entire life to afford the good ones, and the bad ones turned him into a dude who's almost 40, rocking a ponytail, typing hate messages that make Donald Trump tweets look legible. I don't actually know his financial situation because, you know, he's a nobody, so it's not like he's got an open secrets page or anything. But judging from the fact that he's 36 and he's a business owner, and the business he owns is a dog walking company that has like a 3-star Yelp review, I have a feeling he's not really rolling in the dough, you know? Seriously, how do you fuck up dog walking, dude? Somebody went out of their way to write a bad review on Yelp about how much you suck at walking dogs. Now, I don't know what his educational or work history is because, again, he's a nobody with no Wikipedia page for me to look it up on, but I'm pretty confident in saying that, like him, it's probably about as deep as a kiddie pool with a leak in it. It doesn't take much digging to find all you really need to know about him, and that's that he's one of those, you know, performative peacock progressives that learned about what's going on in the Middle East for the first time in October of 2023 and then made it his entire insufferable personality. And he did that, you know, not because he actually gives a shit about the plight of the Palestinians, but because he's a privileged suburban white kid with mommy issues who desperately needs everybody to pay attention to him because he's a special little boy. So, you know, he's one of those Jill Stein voting genocide Joe jackasses who has a weaker grasp of nuance than a gerbil has of quantum mechanics, and such a horribly atrocious understanding of domestic and foreign policy, it's amazing that Trump hasn't made him a cabinet member yet. But of course, with his doctorate from Dunning-Kruger University, he just believes that everybody should listen to his dumbass opinions, and if you don't, he's gonna call you a Nazi. And also an ethno-fascist and a bunch of other words he doesn't actually understand, but thinks if he uses them, he'll sound smart. And that sort of explains that message he wrote me while he was clearly smelling toast. Because he has the cognitive function of a toddler who's never been told no and the moral superiority of a preacher who spends an alarming amount of time alone with the altar boys, he's willing to throw literally every marginalized community conceivable under the bus so he can give himself a little pat on the back. And I know this because this extends to his elected position, where everybody he works with and a ton of members in the community hate him, like officially hate him, like they put it on paper that they hate him. He has had numerous calls for his resignation for alarming and problematic behavior. He's got multiple open letters calling for his resignation from a coalition of progressives. And this includes all of the other council members. Now listen here, lick me off. If everybody who is trying to accomplish the same goals that you pretend to care about fucking hates you so much they want you to resign, maybe you're the problem. See, because here's the thing, Cupcake, because I know you pretend to be a progressive, but to be a progressive, you have to be working for, you know, progress. It's in the fucking name. So if you spend all of your time bitching about people who are out there actually fighting for progress, obstructing progressive movements, causing division in progressive coalitions, all because you feel they aren't as morally superior as you are because they live in reality and understand that the world exists on a fucking grayscale, you're not a progressive. You're a fucking conservative cosplaying as a progressive. Because you do more to conserve the status quo and push us towards fascism than any fucking corporate Democrat could could ever hope to do. And your little elected position right here is a perfect example of how pathetic people like you are. Because this is a whole group, right, of elected officials and community members with the common goal of police accountability. But you are so fucking toxic that the group can't spend the time working on the problem you pretend to care about because you are so performative and disruptive that they have to focus their time on holding you accountable. And that is just such a perfect, digestible example of everything that's wrong with people like you, because when we can see it so clearly that somebody as insignificant as you is so disruptive on something that is so local with such low stakes, it's not hard to see how little performance peacocks like you can do actual, real damage. And no matter how many times you call everybody a Zionist or a Nazi or an ethno-fascist or whatever the fucking flavor is of the day, and no matter how many times you try to convince yourself that you're not the problem, everybody else doing the real work is actually the problem, the reality is that people like you are ultimately responsible for immigrants getting thrown in concentration camps, for women having their rights stripped from them, for people in the LGBTQ community's existence being fucking criminalized, for all of the unrest, the ethnic cleansing in the Middle East getting worse, for climate change not getting better, for the oligarchy just fucking oligarching. Because as much as MAGA sucks, and believe me, they are the most horrible people on the planet, there's not that many of them. They have power because people like you gave it to them. The Joe Bidens and the Hillary Clintons you hate exist because people like you put them there. Because you could have used all that performative energy you spent patting yourself on the back and did something productive. So you could have worked with the actual communities that are suffering and the organizations that are working on addressing all of the issues you pretend to care about and done the work. You know, the work that in the real world takes more than showing up to a protest or two with a Palestinian flag and then patting yourself on the back for a job well done. You know, the work that sometimes requires you to put on your big boy pants and make hard decisions you don't exactly like because it means it'll do the least harm to the most amount of people. The big boy decisions that won't set us back a fucking century so we can continue doing the hard work that allows us to continue the slow march forward. But now the people who actually go out there and do the work can't even fight for progress because they are too busy fighting for their lives to not lose the basic human rights that were bought and paid for by the blood of their parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents. And people like you not only allowed that to happen, but you helped it happen. So listen here, David. Nobody gives a shit about your little temper tantrums that you throw at me or the people you work with because your opinions are less than irrelevant. You should really stop sharing what you think because you don't have anything important to say. Instead, what you should do is you should listen, Linda. Listen with your ears. Listen to the people doing the work and fucking resign. And since, like you, your IQ lives in the fucking basement, you should go back there with it and not come out until you're ready to listen to the people who do know what the fuck's going on and you're ready to listen to the communities that are actually affected by the things you pretend to care about. Because until you're ready to do that, clearly nobody wants you here. In fact, they don't want you here so badly, they wrote a fucking letter. Seriously, man, just do better. Like, do some work on yourself. Kindergarten level work, specifically. Like, get you some hooked on phonics or something because damn. How are you gonna be out here telling people they should listen to you about social organizing when you can't even organize a fucking sentence? Anyway, have a day.